Hey guys, Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we have a review of the LionSteel T R E. Let me first off say thank you very much to the friend and subscriber who sent this over for review. Really cool knife, and it's a great opportunity for me to be able to check this one out. As many of you know, the blade length on this means that this is not going to be a knife that I would ever buy. It's just too small. I will say that after using this knife a little bit and carrying it for review and testing, I have confirmed the fact that I could never carry a knife of this size. It's just not quite big enough for me. That said, this is an exceptionally well done knife, as LionSteel is known for, and in fact I believe this was overall knife of the year, either maybe the year before last, not 2016 but 2015. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that year, maybe mention what year it actually was if 2015 is not it. LionSteel, you know, they've got a great number of blades. They're really good on construction and on quality control and on fit and finish. You know, and I think of knives like the SR1, the tie spine. Of course, one of my favorite knives is the Kerr, and that's a little bit larger than this, and I will bring it in for comparison at the end of the video. And so this is no exception. It fits right in with all of those. It's very well made. Their attention to detail and their level of fit and finish is second to none, and that remains to be the case on this little knife. Now, the thing that's mainly notable about this knife is, of course, the options that it offers for deployment. This has the flipper on it, and it can flip. It also has the thumb stud, and so it can be deployed via thumb stud if I can do it. Yeah, you will. That will be one of the things I talk about when we get to that point. Also, you could take both of those off and have a two-hand opening knife if that was required where you are. So it's got these various methods of opening. Not all of them work as well as you would hope, but they all do work. Okay, so that's the main feature about, or the main standout feature of this knife. Now here's what I'm going to do for the review. Because I'm sort of beside, you know, I have no real preference or desire for that feature, I'm going to imagine the knife came just like this, and you know, I don't really know that this can be you know, that the flipper can be taken off, the thumb stud can be taken off. We're just going to pretend like those are not possibilities because I feel like that's not enough for a knife to rely on. Okay, a knife needs to stand on its ability as a folding cutting tool rather than on a gimmicky feature that, you know, can allow you to adjust how you open it. So my thoughts on that I'll save and maybe clarify a little further at the end. Let's start off with size and weight the way that we always do. The overall length on this is 6 7/8 inches, so just under 7 inches. The blade length on this is 2 7/8 inches, and the handle is 3 15/16, so almost 4 inches long. It's just under half an inch thick, and it weighs in at a paltry 2.9 ounces, so a very lightweight knife here. Certainly one that if you're carrying, you're not going to notice at all in your pocket. I did carry this a little bit, and yeah, it does carry, of course, very comfortably, as you would pretty well expect from a knife of this size. I will show you now, and I'll probably show you again when we get to the handle discussion. There's the floating backspacer, which is awesome, but you can see that this knife is pretty heavily milled out internally to make it even lighter, and so that's very much appreciated. It is just an extra additional detail, and LionSteel always does a great job with those little details. So let's go ahead and start off by talking about this very good stonewashed M390 drop point blade. 2 7/8 inches overall. Notice one thing that's kind of cool about it is it almost looks like a harpoon blade because of this sort of reverse swedge. So normally you'd think of a swedge being cut out here. In this case, it's back here, and it really does give the blade sort of that harpoon appearance to it. On the back spine, it is a nicely crowned back spine, which is pretty typical for LionSteel. And the way they've done that swedge, it leaves a little more material out by the tip, which is going to make it a little more have a little, give it a little more material out there and allow it to be a little bit stronger. In terms of actual cutting performance, this knife is nice and thin behind the edge, so it really cuts well, which that's kind of a requirement. And not all LionSteels that I've had have been that great in terms of edge geometry, but this one is definitely very good. If you remember that far back, the tie spine was a big disappointment for me in terms of edge geometry. In fact, I thought it was terrible. But this one, definitely not. Really nice blade, extremely useful, and of course M390 steel is going to be very durable. It's going to hold an edge like crazy, and it's not going to be easily corroded. So total win on this blade, except for the fact that it's a little too small. My son today was eating apples, and even when I went to just cut an apple in half, the blade doesn't give you enough length to reach across the whole apple. I had to switch to something else. So that is a bit of an issue for me, and that's generally why I prefer the larger blades. Now, moving on to lockup and deployment. And here's where we'll talk just a little bit more about the various features. As you can see, there is a torque screw right there in the bottom that would allow you to take that flipper tab off. There's also a torque screw there in the top that would allow you to take the thumb disc off if you wanted to. Or as this owner has it set up, both are on, and we didn't really discuss which one he prefers, but certainly I like the flipper the best, although the thumb stud does work, even though I failed at it a little bit earlier there. It does work a lot nicer with your left hand than your right. Give me a second chance at this, guys, and I'll try to, if you have your fingers on the lock bar at all, it's really difficult to open. And of course the knife is so small that there's not a lot of room for your fingers off the lock bar. So that I'm not a huge fan of. So the thumb stud I don't really like, as we're talking about the lockup and deployment. I don't really like the thumb stud deployment because it's just too awkward. Now, if you carried and used this knife every single day, all the time, you would figure out a way, to configure your fingers somewhere over here so that you wouldn't have that issue. In terms of thumb stud deployment, flipper deployment though, it works reliably, not exceptionally though. It's not like some of the knives that I've shared. That demonstrates what I'm talking about. It's not like some of the knives I've shown you where, let me bring this knife back. This was recently reviewed. This knife is how a flipper should work. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it or figure out how to get your hands in the right spot. You hand this to anyone, they're going to touch that flipper and the knife is going to deploy every time, no matter what. And that's what I'm looking for from a flipper. So that's a combination of the size and geometry of the flipper and this detent strength. And so because this knife doesn't do that, I've got to take some points away for the flipping action. Now beyond that, it's actually a pretty smooth knife. It is on bearings, and if you, as I say, if you think about it, if you're intentional about it, you can get it to flip, but you can't just kind of grab it and go to flip it and it's just going to work every time for you. And that's really what I look for in a well-designed flipper. Of course, those are all removable, and you could go right down to removing everything and have a knife that you'd have to open with two hands like this, which you can do. And I tried that a number of times because I thought, well, what if I was, what if this was my knife and I was carrying this somewhere that had to have two-hand opening? Can you do it? And you certainly can. Now, once we talk about the deployment methods, once the knife is opened, it is very solid. And of course, we would expect that not only at this price point, but from LionSteel in general. This is really solid, no side-to-side play, no up and down play, locks up reliably. The tension on the lock bar is set nicely so that it's pretty easy to actuate that lock open and closed. So that definitely is all very good. Now let's move down to the handle, and the handle is where we're going to see some really nice stuff, guys. I'm going to bring this in a little closer for you. Look at the gorgeous milling on that titanium, floating backspacer, Every surface on this knife, I mean, every angle is just beautiful. It really, really is a work of art. And so in this respect, in terms of, you know, just attention to detail, in terms of the quality of the processes involved in making this, this is, you know, just very, very impressive. Okay, like I mentioned on the Kerr, I love how they actually allow for the screw heads in the handle so that they're able to sort of sit flush with the surface, and it has to be specifically milled around them. Really, really, really nice looking handle, and of course really, really well built. They have also milled out the interior. We showed you that earlier, and I'll just show you that one more time. Now the anodization, I want to say, is not factory. If it is, someone confirm, but everyone that I've seen, and I looked up, you know, a number of places where these were for sale, and they were all just the standard tie, not anodized blue the way these are. So I think that's an aftermarket mod that's been done. So very, very nice knife, very well done. Okay, I mean, very, very nice handle, very well done. The pocket clip works really well in and out of pocket, no issues with that whatsoever. Lanyard hole is sufficient for 550 cord, and maybe this would be the kind of knife that a person would want to put a lanyard on because it's a little bit smaller. And in terms of the ergonomics on this handle, it's not bad, but again, it's a small knife. So you know, my expectations are low, and it's not super hand filling. Okay, but it's comfortable, and there are no hot spots. And I will say this, the thumb disc here does give you a place to kind of have your thumb. Okay, in other grips, you know, when I'm working with this knife, when I'm using it, I don't have any major issues with it. Okay, I don't have any, you know, I wouldn't complain about any hot spots or any discomfort in any area. In various grips, you know, in a hammer grip, I find it's not hand filling enough to make me feel very confident about it. But again, it's comfortable in all different variations. So in terms of ergonomics, yeah, I have no major complaints along the lines of ergonomics other than the size of the handle, which goes along with the size of the knife. So if you're into knives this size, you're probably used to not being able to get your whole hand on them. For me, that throws me off because I never carry a knife of this size. So when I grab a knife, I expect to be able to get a handful. So let's do some comparisons. Of course, there's the obvious one. This is the LionSteel Kerr, and you can see these are very, very similar. They are both Moletta designs. And this is, you know, the Kerr is very much kind of a... Hold on there, guys. Sorry about that. The Kerr is very much the sort of big brother to this knife. Okay, so I gotta say, this of course would be the one I would take any day of the week. And even this is almost too small for me, but it's very hand feeling, very comfortable. I love the blade shape. And this is quite a bit cheaper as well. And I feel like, you know, a lot more useful because of the size. In terms of a small knife, here is a pretty popular one, and this one is also visiting from the same guy who sent the TRE along. But there's a Spyderco Dragonfly, a knife that a lot of people are pretty familiar with. And this, you know, if I was going to carry this knife, I would go right down to this because now I'm carrying a knife that's super duper small. I feel like I've got all the same cutting power. I've got a lot of the same ergonomic issues, but if I'm going to have those issues, I may as well go really small. So that is the Dragonfly. By the way, great knife. It is reviewed on this channel, and so you may want to look for that. A couple other folders that I want to bring in here. Here is the LionSteel, recently reviewed, I guess, LionSteel G3 Puko. And this knife, again, is... you know, this is about as small as I want to go. You know, the handle is pretty small. It doesn't come out of my hand. Of course, the action on this is phenomenal, considerably better than the TRE. And this knife is going to be, I don't know, 60 bucks or something. Now, stainless steel handle, which obviously is going to be the major reason for that. One more knife to show you here, and this is the Paramilitary 2, as if I can't remember what that's called. So yeah, the Para 2, because that's such a popular, well-known knife, I wanted to throw that in there because I just think many of you will immediately sort of recognize that. So there you go, guys. Those are some comparisons. Now let's give my overall thoughts on the LionSteel T R E. I think that's a very well-made knife. It's a very functional knife, and certainly if the special feature where you can take the thumb stud or the thumb disc and the flipper tab off is highly appealing to you, well then there's nowhere else to look. You pretty much have this option and that's it. In terms of though high-end titanium frame lock knives that are really well made, that'll satisfy that desire for something high-end and cool, there are quite a few other competitors out there that are doing at least as good a job and often better because of the action. The big complaint that I have about this is just that it's not the best flipper that I've seen, and it doesn't deploy as well with the thumb stud or the thumb disc as a lot of others I've seen. So for that reason, if you're thinking of this, there are some other, We Knives has some nice little knives out there, as do a number of other companies. But I will say this is a LionSteel. And as a LionSteel, it's extremely well made. It's gorgeous. There is not a single thing missed when it comes to attention to detail. Let me show you one more thing. I noticed this while I was going over this knife a couple nights ago, but notice how even here, they were so thoughtful as to figure out that when the lock bar is engaged, okay, there's the potential for a bit of a rough spot there. So they've actually milled this together so that there's a nice little cutout where your finger wants to kind of wrap around the knife there. And that's the kind of attention to detail that you do not see very often. That really speaks to a company that has really thought of everything. And so from that standpoint, in terms of construction and quality control and just attention to detail and fit and finish, this knife is very exceptional. Not my favorite because of its size, but I'm sure there are many people who love this knife, and you may be one of them. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.